Hi, my name's Helen Trethui, and welcome to another one of my potted webinars. And this one is on the important topic of creating a positive classroom climate for neurodiverse learners. Wow, what a mouthful, but nonetheless a very important topic. Because teachers, whether they like it or not, are very powerful in the climate they create within their classroom. They can make some children feel important and positive and valued, and at the same time, often unintentionally, make other children feel as if they can't succeed, they're not very important, they can even feel almost worthless. A teacher can create the idea that one behaviour is something to be aspired to and something else is bad, and vice versa. They can affect the way that students interact with each other and treat each other, and they can affect how a student feels about themselves, both personally and as a learner. And that then affects, in turn, their learning journey and how they do at school. So the success of students, while it is within the student themselves, is also in the hands of the teacher. And it's very important that the teacher starts to understand that their class is full of very many different learners, neurodiverse learners. We're now beginning to understand that students think, behave, and learn very differently. And they're not just like a glass that we can just fill up with knowledge and then they learn all the skills that we would like them to learn. It's really not as straightforward as that. And there are some people who have definite challenges in their learning. And that's my focus really for the webinar today. Now, it is a potted one, so I'm only going to just highlight a few issues. But the two bits I would like to focus on are working memory, which is very prevalent, and slow processing, which also gets forgotten very often. Now, those two difficulties can be part of a wider learning difference, like dyslexia or ADHD or autism, but equally they can be standalone learning differences. But they are something that every teacher should really understand. Now, when I give my full webinar, which will be very soon, I'm sure, I will touch on these things in a lot more detail. But within this potted webinar, I just want to give you a taste of some of the things that can cause difficulties and why they cause such an issue, shall we say, in the learners. So some people got slow processing, and people often equate slowness with not being quite so bright, not being so academically able. And very often that isn't the case. I'm sure as you look at these signs, there are students you recognise. You answer a question and there's this long pause before you've got an answer. And the assumption of many teachers is that that child didn't really understand or they don't really know. Where often students can actually know the answers, they just can't give a quick response. And equally, when they're writing or they're doing the sums, they might not be able to complete that work in a timely manner. And that's something, again, where teachers think, oh, it's because they don't really understand it that well, they need some more practice, rather than actually understanding that this is an inherent difficulty where the student actually couldn't go faster, even if they wanted to. So working memory difficulties affect many more students than we like to think. And again, when you read through these signs, you will realise there are a lot of students in your class that do these things. And one of the ones, really, it should be at the top of the list, but it's not. One of the things that's probably most important is that they forget instructions. And they are these children where you've explained your lesson beautifully and you've given all the examples and then you say, off you go. And then no sooner have you done that, then there's a child, they're either putting their hand up or they're coming up to you and going, Miss, what have I got to do? And of course, the natural reaction is one of frustration. It's hard actually to hide it because you've just explained everything. Why on earth don't they know what to do? And very often teachers come to the conclusion that they're being lazy, they weren't listening carefully enough, without realizing that actually, if you have working memory difficulties, it wouldn't matter how hard you listened. You would not be able to listen and process the amount of information a typical teacher gives. One of the hardest things about having one of these neurodiverse difficulties, no, I don't think that's the right way of saying it, but one of the worst things about having working memory difficulties or slow processing is actually the way that you are treated. And I know this from first-hand experience, both of myself and of my son, where people misjudge you very easily and they don't actually realize what is going on in your head. So there's still an assumption that someone who can answer a question quickly is the brightest in the child in the class. Teachers love it. They love those ones who give those quick answers without realizing that actually someone who's a bit more slow and ponderous actually might be thinking of a more interesting, a more deep answer. And then there are some children who just simply, it takes them time to work through what you're saying and process it. They can't give a quick answer. And I'm still surprised that so many teachers value the quantity of what a child produces above the quality. So the child who finishes the task first, as long as they've done it reasonably well and they haven't completely rushed it, most teachers will be like, yeah, well done. Oh, great, you've got it finished already. And that child who is barely finished at the end of the lesson, if finished at all, even if they've done the most brilliant piece of work, will not get that same level of praise. And that's very hard. And it does damage, over time, it does damage a child's self-esteem. Equally, students who've got working memory difficulties are also misjudged because there's an assumption that listening skills are something that a student can control. And those students who are more diligent and trying harder will listen better and respond better. Whereas there's some students who it wouldn't matter how hard they listened, they would not be able to remember or process what you have said. And sometimes they look very distracted, and that's because focus is one of the consequences, or lack of focus, we should say, is one of the consequences of having working memory difficulties. And so these students are often misunderstood. People think they're not trying hard enough or they're lazy. That was often said about me when I was at school, and it really was never the case. So this is where the teacher really has the power to make all the difference. Of course, they can give different work, and in my next webinar, I will be talking more about very, very practical strategies that you can use to help students who are neurodiverse. But this is more in a general about creating that positive climate. So you, as the teacher, can set the tone for the classroom. You can make it okay for someone to make a mistake. You can praise someone when they've given the wrong answer just because they've tried. You can say well done when someone's written the sentence, even though someone next to them has written 5 sentences. You have that choice and you can create that environment. Part of it is actually, mentally yourself, of accepting that actually these students might be trying their best. The reason if students not learning or not doing so well might not actually be to do with lack of effort or even lack of ability, just the fact that they learn differently. I feel it's so important that any reward system is actually achievable for all. It's so easy to reward students who have those kind of perfect learning behaviours. They listen to the instructions, they do the tasks, they say please and thank you, they're the first in line, they help their other people in the class, and they're just so delightful. But think about it. How hard are they really trying? They are just actually being themselves. And yet another student who is actually genuinely trying their best, but just blurts out the answer because they've got ADHD or can't listen and pay attention because they've got working memory difficulties, or gets upset with another student because they misunderstand something because they've got some sort of auditory processing difficulty, those children are then blamed for their behaviours because it's felt that they can alter that behaviour, when actually it probably isn't as easy as we think to do so. So just accepting that these students maybe cannot control their behaviour quite in the way that we think they can, and they are genuinely trying their best and deserve our recognition and praise when they are doing what is best for them. So that is one of the essences of creating this positive classroom environment. Now, as it's a potted webinar, that's all for now, but it will be to be continued very soon. Bye for now.